Alright, so far we have created our navigation bar and added a background image to our web page. Now we are ready to create this Jumbotron in the middle of the page and then the footer. But before we do that, let's just change the font of our web page. You can see that the final font is different from the current one. So you're going to use Google Fonts. Okay. And let's look for Arvo. So if you click on Quick Use, all you need to do is use the normal one by copying this code into the head section of the web page. Okay. Okay, now we're going to need to go to the styling and inside the body section, add the font family property and set that to Arvo. Okay, and as a fallback, I'm going to go for serif. So now if we save and refresh the page, we can see that our font has now changed. Okay. Now let's move to the Jumbotron, okay, and create this title and text and the sign up button. So our Jumbotron is going to be right after the navigation bar, okay. So that's going to be a div of class Jumbotron. Okay, and let's also give it an ID. We might use later. My container. And now let's add the heading, okay, and a couple of paragraphs. Okay, and finally, let's place our sign up button. So that's going to be a button. Okay, so let's give it a type of button for Assistive Technologies. Okay, let's save and refresh and see how it looks like. Okay, now to style the button, let's just add a couple of classes. So you're going to use the button class, okay, and button large to make the button bigger. Okay. Let's just write some text for now. Sign up, it's free. Now let's style our Jumbotron as in the final page. Okay, so first of all, we want the background of our Jumbotron to be transparent. So let's go to the CSS file and add a section for the Jumbotron. So we're going to select the Jumbotron using the Jumbotron class. And let's start with the background. So we're going to set the background color property to transparent. Okay. Now we need to center the content. Okay. And that's going to be by using the text align property and set it to center. All right. Now let's add some letter spacing, okay, using the letter spacing property, and I'm going to go for 2 pixels. Or 2.5 pixels. Okay. Now let's create a bit of space on top of the Jumbotron. Okay, so to do this, we're going to use the margin top property, and let's set that to 150 pixels, for instance. Okay, it looks fine. We could add some padding of 10 pixels. Okay. Okay, now let's move to the sign up button. Okay, so first we will need to create some space on top of the button, and then we're gonna need to style the color of the button. Okay, so to do this, we're gonna add a couple of classes to the button. So the first class is going to take care of the color of the button. Okay, and we're gonna use the same class later on to style these buttons, the login button and the submit button for forgot password. Okay, and the other class is going to be used only for creating some spacing on top of the button. Okay, so let's call the color class green and the spacing class sign up. Okay. Okay, now let's add a section for buttons. Okay, so let's create spacing first using the margin top property. Okay, so you're going to select this time the sign up class. Okay, and we're going to set the margin top to 50 pixels. Okay, that looks fine. And now we're going to move to the green class. And we'll set the background color of the buttons to this nice green color. So we're going to use the RGBA function. So RGB for the 3 colors we're going to need to choose, and A for the transparency. Okay, as you can see, the button is transparent, but once we hover on the button, the transparency goes away. So the values we're going to input here are going to be 114, 190, and 35. Okay, that's for the color. And then for the transparency, I'm going to go for 0.8. Okay, so let's save and refresh. So you can see the color. Now, when we hover on the elements, we want the transparency to go away. So you're going to use the RGB function without transparency. And if we save and refresh, now when we hover on the button, we can see that the transparency goes away. All right, now we're going to move to the footer. So to create a footer using Bootstrap, all we need to do is create a div of class footer and place the content inside a container. So let's go ahead and do this. So a div of class footer, and then place the content inside a container. So the container could be of class container or container fluid. So I'm going to go for container, as I don't want to use the full width of the page, okay, for the footer. Now let's create a paragraph inside our container and copy the contents. Okay, so the copyright sign we'll need to create it using an HTML entity. So that's going to be ampersand copy and then semicolon. Okay, so let's save and refresh. Okay, so we can see the footer contents there. Okay, we need to add some styling later on. But before we do that, let's just write the current year using some PHP code so that it gets updated automatically. So rather than writing 2016, I'm gonna write some PHP code in there. Okay, so we're gonna create a variable. I'm gonna call it today. Okay, and to get the current dates, we're gonna use the dates function. Okay, so if you remember, we can format the date by using the right parameters that we pass to the date function. So as we want only the year, okay, the full year, we're going to use capital Y only. Okay, and then we're going to echo the variable today. Okay, so let's save and refresh, and we can see that it works. Okay. Okay, now let's style the footer. So first of all, we're going to position the footer at the bottom of the page. So to do this, the footer is going to have a position absolute. Okay, and we're going to position it relative to the HTML element. So the HTML element will need to get a position relative. Okay. And also, we're going to make the HTML elements take the full height of the browser. So that's going to be by using the min height property that we'll set to 100%. All right, so now let's move to the footer. Okay, so let's select the footer using its class footer, and first of all, let's position it. Okay, so it's going to be absolute, and to make it stick to the bottom of the page, we are going to set the bottom property to 0. Okay, which means that the distance between the footer and the bottom of the page is going to be 0. So if we save and refresh, now you can see our footer at the bottom of the page. Now let's center the text using the text align property. Set it to center. Okay, let's try again. Okay. At the moment, our footer is not taking the full width of the page. And that's why when we centered the text inside our footer, it is actually centered, but the footer is only spanning from this point to that point. So what we need to do is make the width of the footer, okay, spread across the whole width of the page by giving it a width property. Okay, that we'll set to 100%. Now if we save and refresh, we can see that the footer is now taking the full width of the page and the text is centered. Okay. All right. Now let's give our footer this nice background color. Okay, so it's the same background color as the navigation bar. So very simply, what we're going to do, we are going to go to the navbar custom styling, okay, and just add the footer class in there. Okay, so now if we save and refresh, we can see that our footer has got now this nice background color. And finally, let's add some padding to our footer. So let's go for a padding of 10 pixels. Okay, and if we refresh, that looks nice. Okay, but it looks like we don't have a big padding bottom in the final page. So what we're going to do, we're going to use padding top only rather than the whole padding. Okay, so if we save and refresh, that looks more or less similar to the final page now. Okay. Alright, so in the next video, we're going to create all the modals inside our page. So this includes the sign up modal, the login modal, and the forgot password modal.